Everywhere you look, the rich history of the United Kingdom is there to be seen. But hidden beneath our feet, there's still a wealth of archaeological treasure just waiting to be found. That's why each year, all across the country, our archaeologists dig, dive, and explore their way down.
Oh my God! Some of the best stuff you're ever going to see. Oh wow.
Look at this. We got an arrowhead.
Searching for fresh discoveries.
Hypercaust.
Revealing the imprint of ancient civilizations.
It's been there for 5,500 years.
And unearthing fascinating objects.
Fantastic decoration. Any musket balls yet, Aaron?
Wow, look at that.
Every dig adds new pieces to the ever-growing archaeological jigsaw that is the epic story of our islands.
And I'm down.
This year, I visit digs in some extraordinary locations and solve mysteries using cutting-edge tools.
Oh, this is wonderful.
I'm joined by a trio of expert investigators.
So you can see how that gives you a really unique signature.
That's right. Excellent.
So they were using food as a type of bribery.
Who dig deeper to answer the questions raised by the finds.
That's how he got away with it.
Exactly.
Finally, the archaeologists bring their best discoveries into our tent.
Yeah, it's a cracking find.
For up-close analysis.
So it's completely unique impression. That's wonderful.
Welcome to Digging for Britain. This time we look at the most exciting archaeology from the north of Britain. In the heart of Liverpool's docks, we uncover the piermasters' homes levelled by Hitler's bombers. What's that?
A fragment of shrapnel from an anti-aircraft artillery gun.
On the Yorkshire coast, we unearth a 6,000-year-old salt-making factory.
It's the earliest site of its type in Western Europe.
Really? And mysterious medieval bones are brought into the tent for a forensic assessment.
These types of holes form to allow pus drainage out of the marrow cavity in the bone.
And it carries on down here. Oh, that's horrendous.
But first, we journey back towards the Ice Age and some very ancient evidence of wild camping. The Hebrides, off the west coast of Scotland, contain a wealth of impressive prehistoric monuments, including the stunning Callanish stones on the Isle of Lewis. Our first dig takes place on the most southerly isle in the Hebrides, Islay, just 70 miles west of Glasgow. We've come to Islay's sparsely populated east coast, separated by this narrow strait from the island of Jura. We know that there were people around in this landscape 10,000 years ago, but they were nomadic hunter-gatherers, and so any traces of their existence are going to be very subtle and often ephemeral. Essentially, we're just looking for campsites. And this landscape is completely covered in vegetation, so where do you start to look? The coast is cloaked with a blanket of heather and bracken. It's easier to get here by canoe than by car. Yet a team from Reading University is digging here. And the dig is led by an expert on Islay's archaeology, Steve Mythen. Steve, apart from the fact that it is absolutely gorgeous here with the mountains of Jura there in the distance, what was it that brought you here? How did you know that there was archaeology worth digging?
This was covered in thick bracken, and the estate wanted to get rid of the bracken, so they got some pigs to work. And they sent pigs off along here foraging, thinking they'd root out all the bracken. It didn't work, but what the pigs did do, when they're rooting around here, they turned over some bits of flint.
there's no natural flint on the east coast of Islay, and the estate manager thought the flint looked worked. It was intriguing enough to call in Steve. That was in 2010, and the archaeologists have been digging here ever since. And it's flint that dominates the finds trays.
In 2019, there's about 26,000 pieces of flint we got from the whole site. 26,000. And last year was about 19,000.
The key artefacts are these tiny little points here, known as microliths. So these are type artefact of the Mesolithic period.
So microlith means tiny stone?
It means tiny
literally.
stone, but these are chipped down the side, and these would have been points of arrows or barbs, maybe in spears, maybe in other sorts of tools.
These tools are typical of the Mesolithic period, making them at least 6,000 years old. At this time, the inhabitants of Islay would have been nomadic hunter-gatherers, moving around with the seasons and visiting this place when resources here were plentiful. As Steve's team digs deeper, they travel further back in time.
We are now finally down to what appears to be a primary deposit overlying the natural glacial till, which has fewer flint artifacts, and they all look quite chunky, they're quite big.
These tools date to the early Mesolithic, around 10,000 years ago, and are larger than the later microliths, but also much rarer.
So this is quite a large blade. It's of this sort of creamy flint, used for cutting or something.
Sediment from the dig is sieved in a nearby stream to clean away mud and reveal tiny archaeological finds. So, bag of sediment. What's in there? And I can't resist the chance to discover my own little nugget of prehistoric archaeology. Obviously, what I'm hoping for is a 10,000-year-old arrowhead. Washing away the silt reveals an assortment of the smallest flints. Oh, there's loads in here. So this is essential, isn't it, Rory, for picking up all these teeny tiny fragments? You wouldn't pick those up at the excavation, would you?
No, we wash all the muck and the mud away, and we find all of these tools and scrapers.
Oh, look at that. That's a nice little bit. It's so sharp. I nearly cut myself then. This is amazing, you know, after thousands of years of being in the ground. My small flint matches the oldest ones found here. It could have been made almost 10,000 years ago. That little flake of flint is still absolutely knife sharp. That's why they're using it, isn't it? It's such brilliant material for making into blades. We can imagine people here making and using flint tools, but there's also intriguing evidence of burning. What have we got here? Because I can see some larger stones here. Is that an outline of a hearth?
This is indeed a wonderful fireplace, nicely stonily built. I suspect they built a little fire there.
Yeah.
When they came back, they used the same place. And then it became a sort of just a tradition. And sometime would come, that's where our ancestors sit. This is where we sit to tell the stories.
Yeah.
So I think this was a really important fireplace.
I mean, this is amazing that you are looking at centuries' worth of people coming back to this place.
Yeah, no, it's a lovely thought.
Burnt hazelnut shells from different layers of the hearth have been radiocarbon dated, revealing that fires were lit here over a period of some 4,500 years. But it seems there were people coming here even before the Mesolithic.
This is also an arrowhead, and this is typical of a culture known as the Arensbergian, and that dates to the end of the Ice Age, between 12,500 and 11,500 years ago. And a few possible Arensbergian points have been found in Scotland before, and in northern Britain generally, but never any in what we call in situ, you know, at a campsite, where it was made and left and forgotten about. Nobody's ever found an Arensbergian campsite in Scotland before.
Really? In the whole of Scotland?
In the whole of Scotland.
And the significance of this is that that's going to be amongst the first people coming back into this landscape after the ice sheets have retreated.
Right. So this site has got a huge amount of riches.
It's an incredibly exciting discovery. Could ancient hunter-gatherers have landed their sealskin canoes here on Islay right back at the end of the Ice Age? With this extraordinary evidence emerging of prehistoric Islay, there's sure to be more to come in the future. Well, thank goodness for the pigs. I don't think I've ever heard of a site discovered by a pig, rooting things up and discovering a brilliant Mesolithic site.
Exactly.
What we've got here is a brilliantly preserved piece of prehistory. The people here were hunter-gatherers looking for a place to set up their camp, and they're coming back to this place generation after generation. And what an amazing place to be camping here on this coast. If I was choosing a spot, it would be right here. The medieval church in Europe extended its influence over everyone's lives. Of course, you could choose to go further. You could become a monk or a nun in the proliferating monasteries, but there was an even more extreme career option. In 2007, a dig on this site in York revealed the remains of a medieval church, All Saints Fishergate. In the apse of the church, a remarkable burial was discovered. Osteologist Lauren McIntyre was among the team of archaeologists on site, and these remains intrigued Lauren so much, she's been studying the bones ever since. Lauren, you've obviously become completely fascinated with this individual. I mean, we've got an image there of the burial when it was uncovered. It is unusual.
I mean, yeah, so normally we see burials in this period of people laid on their backs or like with their legs stretched out in front of them.
With their hands like this? Or
or like over their stomach or something. This skeleton, he's obviously crunched up in quite a crouched position and is located in the apse of a church.
Inside the church?
Yes.
Could she be clergy?
I mean, at that time, there's only really two roles that a female can play in that way. Either you join a convent, become a nun, or the other option is you could become an anchoress.
Right. An anchoress, or anchorite if male, would be incarcerated in a church with only a Bible for company.
Bishop approved it, you would undergo something called an enclosure ceremony, where the idea is that you would be walled up inside the church, still have some access to the outside, like through a window or something for food and things to be passed through.
I mean, it's almost like being a hermit, but inside the church.
Yes, it is exactly like that. You almost become like a sort of living prophet that's sort of associated with your parish.
If this woman was an anchoress, she would have been living what most of us would consider to be a very deprived existence, stripped of any creature comforts. And on top of this, Lauren has found clues that she was being ravaged by a diabolical disease.
Some of the bones have got holes in there. These types of holes will form to allow pus drainage out of the marrow cavity in the bone. So we know that there's something fairly serious going on when that's happening.
You've got an infection deep inside here, and then this is a cloaca allowing the pus and the degraded bone to come out.
Yeah. Got it in the legs as well, you can see here. The entire fabric of the bone is affected.
OK, then. What's the diagnosis?
These types of lesions that we're seeing on the bones, they're very characteristic of syphilis.
In an age before antibiotics, this sexually transmitted disease was incurable. The advanced signs here suggest this woman had been suffering with it for many years.
There's an anchoress kind of manual called the Anchorine Wis, which was written in the 13th century. And so basically, the book outlines that there's two perceptions of disease. God is sending disease to punish you for what you've done.
Yeah.
The flip side of that is that God sends disease in a positive way to cause martyr-like suffering, and it makes you a better person.
Along with advanced syphilis, Lauren has identified signs of other serious diseases.
We think she's probably got osteoporosis.
Okay.
We also think she has septic arthritis, potentially.
This looks
yes.
like septic arthritis here.
All this stuff where you can see that the wrist bones are all kind of fused together.
So there should be 8 separate little bones there, and they're just fused in one mass, and it's all fused to the radius as well.
Yeah, it's horrible.
But if she's in that cell and completely sealed off, who's digging the grave for her?
Well, she could have dug it. So there is actually a passage in the Anchorine Wis that states that to stop you being idle, one of the things that you can do is dig your own grave with your hands.
Right.
Yeah.
It seems a miserable existence.
It does seem it. Although you had a servant come in to look after you, as well, you were allowed to have a pet cat. That's actually one of the things stated in the rule book.
I mean, it obviously was attractive to some
women.
But who was this woman? Remarkably, the date of the burial fits with a record that Lauren has tracked down of an anchoress living at All Saints Church, where this skeleton was unearthed.
The anchoress was called Lady Isabel German, and we know that she lived in the church between 1428 and 1455.
So this could be her?
It could be.
Yeah. It's extremely rare on a medieval dig to find a name which could be associated with the burial. But what else can the archives tell us about this anchoress, Lady Isabel German? Historian Onyeka Nubia has travelled to the University of York to track her down.
I've discovered that there are records here that detail this woman's life and her existence. And they were written during the medieval period, more than 500 years ago. In medieval times, ordinary people were rarely recorded in any historical documents. But archivist Laura Yeoman has found the probate registers and other official records from All Saints Church, where the anchoress once lived. So this particular will refers to Isabel German.
Yes.
What part of it talks about her?
This one's 1436. So this is a monetary bequest from somebody called Thomas Bracebridge. Item lego anachorite recluse in cimitio omnium sanctorum in Fishergate. So I'm leaving to the recluse in the cemetery of All Saints Fishergate. And then this last section here is translating as to pray for my soul and the souls of those people predictis, so mentioned above, and he's leaving 6 shillings and 8 pence.
Excellent. So do we know anything more about this Thomas Bracebridge?
Not a huge amount. We know he was a merchant in York, and that's about all we do know.
So this is somebody who has made his money through trade, and he's looking to save his soul when he dies, and he's therefore bequeathing money to ensure that his soul is passed over.
Yeah.
I just wonder, perhaps because I've got a cynical mind, when these sort of bequests are made, whether the church also gets some benefit from it. She can't spend this money, can she?
No, it's the church itself that's benefiting.
So perhaps I shouldn't be consider myself so cynical. But the anchorite is, in this case, making money for the church.
Yeah.
And this, in a way, indicates the very religious society in which people are willing to give large amounts of money, and those people genuinely believe that it will affect their afterlife, their soul.
And their prospects.
Fellow parishioners are also listed, bequeathing small gifts to Isabel.
We've got a further 4 wills where we can see her receiving, again, monetary donations.
It's interesting, Laura, in that Isabel German is visible. She's visible in these records, and this apparently lowly position is still important enough to be consistently recorded in wills.
I think so. I mean, we can't hear what she had to say. We have no writings for her, but we can infer more about her life through these small snippets out of the wills that we've got.
And quite clearly, she did have an imprint on society. So there is a way in which anchorites, despite what we might think of in terms of their servile position or the strange position that they're in, can offer something to the medieval church that has potency and power and really demonstrates agency. These records show Isabel German spent 20 years as an anchoress. The last entry marks the date she died, August the 31st, 1448.
So just in this line here,
the archives reveal telling details about the power of belief in the medieval church and the role of an anchoress in maintaining that power. Isabel German proves that history is not just the record of kings and queens. It includes people like this woman, Isabel German. She's as real as the kings and queens that populated the 15th century. And her existence is marked in her parish, even though there is no tomb in Westminster Abbey. All there is a shallow grave in York.
For thousands of years, our seas have been crucial to commerce, for travel and trade, but also as a source of food and minerals. Our next dig is located just half a mile from the coast at a place called Street House in Yorkshire. Now, I'm close to the town of Loftus, which became archaeologically famous around 15 years ago because of the discovery of an incredible Anglo-Saxon grave of someone who became known as the Loftus Princess. The discovery, made back in 2005, put this area firmly on the archaeological map when a stunning collection of 7th century gold pendants and jewellery was found in what's thought to have been a woman's grave. I'm here to meet the discoverer of the Loftus Princess, but I don't want to talk about her. I want to find out about his current excavation, because it's something that is completely unique, not just in Britain, but in Western Europe, and I want to see this evidence for myself. Steve!
Ah, hi, Alice.
Hello. So is this it? Is this the field where you found the Loftus Princess?
Indeed, spectacular place. Come and see.
Following his famous Anglo-Saxon find, archaeologist Steve Sherlock suspected there could be more waiting to be discovered here.
Came back in 2016 with a machine, determined to open up a slightly larger area and find this possible Roman pottery kiln.
Right, and it's not at all.
It isn't at all.
It's much more exciting.
It's spectacular.
Yeah. What Steve's team has uncovered is an ancient saltworks, or sultan. But it isn't Roman. It's 4,000 years older than that. It's Neolithic, and it's unprecedented.
There's nothing like this happening in the Neolithic. Yeah. Not just in Britain, in Western Europe.
Really?
Exactly.
So this is really unique.
It's the earliest site of its type in Western Europe.
You must be extremely sure about your dates.
Absolutely. We've got a suite of 9 radiocarbon dates that are showing us a date between 3,900 and 3,700 BC. This is an industrial process on a large scale, something no one expected would be happening in the country at that time.
People would have brought seawater up from the shore to the Sultan here on the hill to be heated.
Jenny's excavating a furnace. It's a clay sort of pizza oven, a big dome-shaped oven sealed at the top. From the furnace, heat is generated, goes through a flue, almost another new invention for the Neolithic, on which there are a series of open halves.
The salt makers would rake out hot embers from the furnace to heat shallow trays made out of fired clay.
They're pouring brine onto these trays, and that's evaporating under the intense heat, and salt crystals are forming for the manufacture of salt by evaporation 6,000 years ago.
That's incredible. Volunteer Jenny has been carefully uncovering the remains of one of the furnaces.
We think this would be the superstructure for the furnace that would have created the heat necessary to bake the vessels.
What about this lump here, then? What's this?
So this is also fired clay, and it seems to be what formed the roof of the structure. And it's collapsed in on top of all the vessels that are actually still inside there.
I mean, this is a factory, isn't it? It's a Neolithic factory.
Yes.
Yeah. The teams unearthed fragments of the trays used to heat the brine.
There's a flat-bottom vessels, which the brine would have sat on this and started to evaporate to create the salt crystals.
Yeah.
We think it's about 60 centimetres long and up to 20 to 30 centimetres wide.
So it's about the size of a fairly standard baking tray.
Yes, indeed. Yeah. On this side, we're getting highly significant salt deposits sitting on this vessel.
Right.
So it ties it directly to salt working.
The archaeologists have also uncovered what could have been supports for the trays.
These, I'm saying, are trivets. They're a bit like a wok stand over a gas ring, and to lift it up slightly, you have a metallic stand for it.
Yeah.
This is doing the same purpose and principle.
Ah, so that's not sitting directly on coals, that's sitting on a trivet over the...
That's our hypothesis, yes.
They've also found evidence of the last stage in this process of Neolithic salt production.
When the salt has been formed, they're put in these cup vessels like that to dry, harden, and make it like a cake that you could actually distribute.
I mean, this is packaging, isn't it, as
yes,
well?
Yes, indeed. You can exchange that for more cattle if you wanted, or stone axes. These would be tradable commodities.
Before this discovery, the earliest known salt production in Britain dated to the Iron Age. This site pushes that date back by more than 2,000 years, and it reveals clear details of the process. In fact, everything that's needed for a bit of experimental archaeology. Yvette Marks from the University of Sheffield is an ancient materials scientist who recreates prehistoric furnaces. And our very own Stuart Pryor is on hand to help out in this archaeological experiment.
You've got an amazing setup here and a crew as well. What's happening?
So we're having a go at reconstructing the salt processing from Street House. So we've done pottery kilns from the Roman period, iron smelting furnaces, but nothing like this has been reconstructed from Britain so far.
This is a proper pioneering experiment. Of course, that also means it may not work, but that's the whole point. After firing our clay vessels, next we have to boil the brine.
Yeah, so slowly, carefully. You would keep adding it over several hours, and that means you will get more salt. So it's not a case of fill it up, one pan of water, you're done. It's a continuous process.
So it's a balancing act between adding the right amount of water, adding the right amount of firewood, and just keeping that fire ticking over.
Yeah, absolutely. It looks quite easy, put a tray on a fire, but the fire's got to be maintained at the right temperature.
We're starting to see salt being manufactured in a Neolithic style.
Yeah, it's really exciting to see it work. This is the first time we've tried reconstructing this technology from the site, and it's working. We've got salt.
We do, we do. The trays seem to work as expected, but how the clay trivets work is a bit more of a mystery.
Initially, we thought they might have been used laid down because it's a flat surface, it's stable. But when we tried that, the fire was too intense and the trays would crack. Well, actually, if you lift these up onto the side and see them as feet, that's a more successful height to have the tray above the fire.
Which is what we've got here.
So which is what we've got there.
So this is true archaeology by experiment?
Absolutely. You can theorise all day, but without testing it and having a go, you don't know if that theory is going to work.
It takes an hour of refilling a tray with seawater before we have enough salt crystals to scrape it into one of the pots.
It's baked on pretty well.
Yeah.
You are starting to get a little collection of salt down at the bottom there.
Yeah.
The Neolithic folk would have left the salt paste in these pots to dry out by the fire for hours, possibly days, to produce a fine salt cake. But I'm gagging to try our produce right now. That's definitely good enough for fish and chips. It's actually, it's a bit clayey, but it's definitely fish and chip worthy. It's great. You've got salt. So, what do we think they're doing with it?
Having salt would have allowed them to preserve meat, but also to make cheese. It would really change how they're storing food and going from that kind of hunter-gatherer moving around to more in one location, preserving things and having things for longer. It's amazing to think that, you know, people 3,800 BC were producing salt.
But most importantly, you made a successful experiment.
It's really exciting, yeah, I'm really happy.
What a great experiment this has been. And actually, I think we figured out why it's such an important revolution in terms of making salt for products that early in the Neolithic. It's quite remarkable.
All through history, the harbours and ports around our coasts have opened the door to opportunity and adventure, but also, sometimes, terror. Our next dig takes place at northwest England's gateway to the Atlantic, Liverpool. This city thrived as British manufacturing boomed during the Industrial Revolution. The foundations for that success were laid in 1715, when the world's first enclosed commercial dock was opened here. Incredibly, some of its walls can still be seen underground. By the 19th century, Liverpool's ports were handling an incredible 40% of global trade. In 1845, Liverpool's crowning glory was opened, the Royal Albert Dock. And there's a fascinating dig that's happening right now on the very edge of the existing docks here that allows us to delve back into the 20th century and the 19th century here at Liverpool Docks. Vanessa Oakton from National Museums Liverpool is leading a team of local volunteer diggers. They have a small window of opportunity to dig into this dock and explore Liverpool's industrial history. Vanessa, what was here then?
We had 3 houses that were on this site that were built in 1852, so big sort of 7-bedroom homes for the dockmasters, the pier masters and their families to live in. They were owned by the Mersey Docks and Harbour Board, so anyone who was the pier master or the dockmaster was given a house so they would be on site in the middle of the night when the tides were high, and then they could open those dock gates to let the ships through.
So what happened to them then?
We know they were actually hit by an incendiary bomb during the Second World War in the Liverpool Blitz.
During the early years of the war, Britain relied heavily on ships being able to access Liverpool's massive docks to unload crucial food and armaments from North America. This made Liverpool an obvious target for Hitler's Luftwaffe, and sure enough, the first bombs fell in August 1940. Months of terrifying raids followed, decimating the city and its docks. 3 especially intense days of bombing in December 1940 became known as the Christmas Blitz. On the 21st of December, a small terrace of pier masters' houses right at the entrance to the Royal Albert Dock suffered a direct hit by an incendiary bomb. Have you found any evidence of the Blitz itself as you've been digging here?
We found some nice pieces of glass which possibly were related to that bombing. So we know an incendiary bomb is designed to smash through a roof and set fire rather than destroy a building.
The bomb site was only re-landscaped to create this small park in the 1980s. Now, archaeologists are digging down and uncovering evidence of life on these docks before the war, and startling reminders of that terrifying night in December 1940. For the last few weeks, the volunteers here have been filming with our Dig Diary cameras.
So far, we found a lot of rubble, but we're starting to find some of the foundations of the house.
So here would have been, we think, one of the bay windows.
Among the finds is evidence of attempts to defend Liverpool during the Blitz.
What's that? So it doesn't look that pretty, but it's quite important in the story of the site. So it's a fragment of shrapnel from an anti-aircraft artillery gun.
Really? It's such a small fragment, but you can link that back directly to the Second World War and the defence of Liverpool.
Exactly, yeah. So it was the most bombed city outside of London.
Really?
Over 70,000 people lost their homes, were made homeless during the war, and we know that about 4,000 lives were lost in Liverpool as well.
Yeah.
So it had a huge impact on the area.
As well as its crucial role in supply, Liverpool was the headquarters for the Navy's Atlantic campaign. So attacks on these docks could come at any time.
We do know one of the pier masters did unfortunately lose his life on the docks when a parachute mine landed in the docks and they were attempting to prevent the dock gates being destroyed.
So it became a very dangerous job, but they had to stay right here.
Yeah, exactly.
The dig is also revealing evidence of life on the dockside back before the bombs began to fall. These were the family homes of senior dock managers who were more well off than your average docker.
Hey, look at that. Ceramic, glazed.
Lovely. We think is a piece of porcelain saucer.
This is a bracket which would have been attached to a bell pull. So whoever needed assistance could ring the bell.
So these are well-to-do families, they have servants?
They had servants, they were quite high up the pecking order, so the dock masters and the pier masters were basically in charge of the dock gate men and the everyday running of the docks, making sure everything went smoothly. So with that came status.
By digging here, volunteers can make personal connections with this site's history.
My dad worked on the docks for all his working life. My father-in-law worked on the docks. And it's lovely to be digging on the docks and seeing the working life of the dockers and the management, I suppose.
Yeah. Underneath the debris from the war is a deeper layer. The archaeologists are now getting down to the rubble that was used to build this pier out into the estuary back in the 1840s. Amongst that rubble are some finds dating back to the 18th century, and they've been gathered together by Liverpool Museum curator Jeff Speakman. So, Jeff, you've got lots of bits of pottery coming out here. What does that tell you about the site?
Lots of small fragments. This one in particular took my eye when it came out of the ground. It's a piece of white salt glazed stoneware. White salt glaze was made between 1720 and 1770. Certainly in the centre of Liverpool, the merchants during the 18th century would have gathered in the coffee houses to eat their lamb chops, but also drink coffee, tea and hot chocolate.
Yeah.
And a lot would have been drunk out of white salt glazed stoneware, cups and mugs.
Some of this fashionable 18th century Staffordshire pottery also made its way across the Atlantic.
I found a piece that was almost identical to this in North America. It happened to be the home of George Washington. So this material actually predates the War of Independence.
So it goes back to that point when what's now the United States was a colony?
Yes.
What an amazing connection.
It is.
Yeah. Today, the site of the pier masters' houses and the Royal Albert Docks are reborn as tourist destinations. But a big part of the draw here is Liverpool's heritage. And this dig has enabled the latest generation to discover a real connection with that rich history.
I dreamt I flew with the saints last night. I know them all by wing size, and up there it just doesn't count for naught whether you're clever or wise.
The head of the medieval church in northern England held immense power, not just a bishop, but a prince bishop, wielding both religious and secular authority. And the palaces of these prince bishops were magnificent, reflecting that wealth and status. In the 16th century, when Henry VIII dissolved the monasteries, some bishops' palaces were destroyed, others survived. And our next story is about one that was left standing at that time, but around a century later was levelled as another wave of religious and political upheaval swept through the country. And the name of the town where this dig takes place leaves little doubt over who ruled the roost: Bishop Auckland in Durham. At its centre, an awesome bishop's palace, Auckland Castle. This was home to a long line of clergy. They were so powerful, these prince bishops became known as the Kings of the North. Here, archaeologists from the University of Durham have unearthed parts of a gigantic medieval palace complex, which for hundreds of years have been buried underground. John Castling is joint leader of the excavation.
Well, I mean, this is just a remarkable site, really, and the story that we've uncovered here is one of a site that looks like an 18th, 19th century bishop's palace, and it absolutely is that, but the excavations that we've done have told the story of it as a medieval structure.
The dig has revealed parts of a giant perimeter wall and gatehouse, and inside, the centrepiece, a huge 13th century chapel.
We're looking at some of the deposits that are around the edge of the chapel to see if there are any bits that tell us about life that happened during this chapel's usage. And we're starting to go down deep on the outside of the structure to try and see if we can work out how deep the foundations were, which tells us a good amount about the height of the thing.
The excavation has uncovered the sturdy foundations of what must have been a magnificent building, brought back to life in this reconstruction. 12 metres wide and 40 metres long, it would have been the largest private chapel in England.
Here we can see one of the columns that would have been supporting the vaulted ceiling that was above our heads. So this would go up, and it would have ribs coming out the top of it, and they would go together. This just really helps you to imagine how big this building would have been.
It was built as a vanity project by the flamboyant Prince Bishop Anthony Beck, who came to power here at the end of the 13th century.
So that's a nice piece of roofing tile, and it's broken.
Chris Gerard has studied this bishop, who seems to have been something of a party animal.
A bit of a rock star bishop, we might want to call him. He was clearly a man who liked the good things in life.
Beck's lavish lifestyle involved frequent feasting in the Great Hall. Unlike your regular bishop, wining, dining and hunting was his calling.
I think he's trying to impress people who come to this site who are his fellow bishops, and also other nobles living and coming and consuming his fantastic food inside his banqueting hall.
Beck's palace was enjoyed by a succession of prince bishops until Cromwell's Puritans came to power in the 1650s. Then many of the offensively opulent buildings were demolished and largely buried. archaeologists are only revealing the palace's secrets more than 300 years later.
It will be the most completely examined bishop's palace in Western Europe by the time we've completed our work here.
As well as evidence of impressive architectural features, the excavations have turned up some incredible finds. So Chris and John have come along to the digging tent to show me how those objects illuminate the story of the lost palace at Bishop's Auckland. How much of the chapel are we actually seeing there, and which part of it is it?
So the west end is here, and there are two big, huge octagonal towers on the end there with the entranceway in the middle. Under here is where the current bishop's office is, and in a lovely bit of serendipity, the bishop's desk is right on top of where the high altar would have been of the medieval chapel. He's sitting in the place of his forebears.
Yeah. We're getting a glimpse inside the chapel from these wonderful, beautiful finds. What about this little copper alloy object here? Can I pick it up?
Yes,
Chris?
sure,
Is
do.
that all right?
So this is a medieval book clasp. So when the book arrives at a place like Durham Cathedral, it gets a new cover and new fittings, which are particular to the local area. And that one has been reused more than once.
How can you tell?
She's got there's several little holes in it, which show you that it's been used on different volumes as time has gone by.
What's interesting about it is that it tells us a little bit about the fact that bishops are moving around, so they're moving their possessions, including, in this case, books, between different sites. So the different castles and palaces and hunting lodges. So Bishop Beck, who constructs the chapel, we know that he spends almost half of his time at Auckland in terms of the documents that he's signing.
How many houses did he have?
Well, they have around about 12 in total, but Beck is one of those who particularly likes Auckland because he gets to go hunting and riding through the park. He also doesn't like being in Durham because he doesn't get on with the monks who are at the priory. They have a different idea as to how a bishop should behave.
They don't approve of the hunting?
They don't so much approve of it. I think it's the feasting is probably what they don't approve of so much. Yeah. But
you can imagine the tutting that went on.
Exactly, yes.
What's this little bell?
So it's a small bell which could have been attached to clothing, or it could have been attached to a horse harness, a sort of jingle bell.
Or falconry, is it too big for
It could be something to do with falconry,
Yeah.
but I have a particular theory, which is it might be a bell for a monkey.
Oh.
Because we know that the Bishop of Durham had monkeys at the end of the 13th century in the 1270s. And I just wonder whether something like that might be connected to a collar of a monkey, which he allowed to run free, chasing each other and chasing almonds which were thrown out for them in the banqueting hall.
I think you're letting your imagination run wild there, Chris.
It's my fantasy and I'm sticking with it.
This is perhaps something which you might expect to find related to a church or a chapel. We've got a really beautiful little crucifix there. Is that gold?
It's silver gilt.
Right.
So you can see on one side it has Christ on the cross.
Yeah.
And if we flip it over, you can see that it has the Virgin Mary.
Yeah.
And she's holding the infant Jesus.
And what's particularly interesting about it is that it's worn, so you can see on the head of Jesus someone's rubbed that. It's probably part of a rosary.
Right.
We found it just outside on an area of cobbling. So
Right,
it had fallen between the cobbles. You can imagine someone losing that and either not noticing or not having time to find it on the ground and going back to look for it.
It's a lovely object. Whoever lost that must have been extremely annoyed.
To feel their emotion, I think, is something really fabulous.
Now, this is absolutely incredible.
My favourite.
I mean, that is gorgeous.
It's an enamel band. It looks a little bit like a bangle, but it would have been used probably to dress perhaps a chalice or a cup, or possibly the base of a cross.
What's it made of?
I think it's made of silver or gold. Parts of it are certainly gold. And then it's covered with crimped pieces of metal that you can see there, that floral design. And then each one of the cells is filled with fused glass in different colours.
Do we know where it might have been made? Is it locally made?
It's likely to be English. It would have been made by a goldsmith. And in terms of dates, probably centre on the 14th century.
Right.
But more than that, we can't say. It's a little bit frustrating, but my guess would be that that object that it once formed a part of would have been found inside the chapel, much like any of these other artefacts we've been looking at.
We're getting just a tiny glimpse here of the medieval opulence of that chapel, and such beautiful glittering finds, aren't they? They're lovely. I love the way each one tells a story.
Yes, it's not just about piety and devotion.
There's a lot about wealth as well.
There's a lot of wealth.
Yeah. 350 million years ago, active volcanoes were forming large parts of what would become Britain, shaping the landscape that we see today. Scotland's capital boasts some especially impressive volcanic rock formations. Edinburgh Castle was built right on top of one. Volcanic rock also creates the landscape at our next dig, taking place just outside the city, in Holyrood Park. We know that there's archaeology here, but this whole landscape is protected. It contains sites of special scientific importance. It's a scheduled monument. And this is the very first time that archaeologists have ever been given permission to dig here. Right at the very top of Dunsupy Hill, students from Edinburgh University are digging. How are you doing?
All right. How are you?
Oh, good. The site of a mysterious ancient hill fort. It's pretty extraordinary that nobody's dug here before, and that must be really special to be the first people here.
I think we feel quite lucky that this is the first opportunity we get.
Yeah.
But also, it's getting progressively more interested in uncovering it.
Leading this dig is John Henderson. John, how on earth did you get permission to dig this? I mean, it's a scheduled monument.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing, really.
Yeah.
There's 4 hill forts in Holyrood Park, and there's never been any excavation on them. We don't know the date of them, really. They're just said to be later prehistoric. This is the first time that we've had a chance to actually dig into them and try and get some dating evidence and work out what's going on.
Yeah. There are more than 4,000 hill forts across Britain. Some were used as defendable strongholds, but they were also places where people lived and gathered. John and his team are hoping that their excavation will shed light on this hill fort's function.
We're actually excavating this rampart here. I mean, you can see it quite clearly.
That's what this is.
Because what we've probably got...
So this is a massive, thick wall?
Yeah, so this is just the foundation of something pretty fantastic and monumental when it was in its full glory.
The trend for building hill forts began around 3,000 years ago, but really took off during the Iron Age. And in Scotland, these vantage points in the landscape continued to be used well into the early medieval period, until around 1,000 years ago. But where does Dunsupy fit into this hill fort timeline? Is this the first evidence that's emerged, then?
This is the first bit of pottery from this hill fort, yeah. Looks like Iron Age pottery. I'm pretty confident that that's what we've got, but we will have to analyse it.
This pottery looks similar to pieces found at other Iron Age sites in the area. And there are also finds that hint at metal industry here, too.
We know there was metalworking here as well, and now we've got slag to back that up too.
Yeah. The pottery and evidence of metalworking give us insights into life in this hill fort, but other finds are emerging too.
Hello, hi.
What's
Just
that?
found a piece of bone.
Bit of bones? Oh, you found loads.
We have had a bag for bones each day. We have been finding so many.
This is evidence of the livestock, cattle and sheep that was being tended and eaten by the people here, who were predominantly farmers.
Well, we do have these little scoops that could be where people were living.
Mm.
They would use these areas just for farming communities to come and have festivals and, you know, exchange animals and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
There's a range of different uses for these sites, and I think that's what's exciting.
The team have discovered a mysterious object, a copper bracelet buried in one of the walls.
I was just digging here, which is where I found the bangle.
And there are more intriguing discoveries, all fitting with an Iron Age date. Got a bone pin here.
Could be, you know, a fastener maybe for clothing or something like that. It's quite a big one.
Oh, it is. It's chunky.
And one of the things we got, which was a bit odd, I'm still not entirely sure what it is, but it's certainly a worked stone ball, maybe for a game, I don't know.
Yeah. It's something that somebody's made very deliberately.
Yeah.
Pecking it, you know, pecking away at it to make it into this shape. Oh, I don't know. It's intriguing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Further analysis and dating of the finds and samples will add to our ever-growing understanding of these enigmatic features in our landscape.
Some of them are certainly defensive structures, some of them are perhaps not.
Yeah.
Which, to me, as an Iron Age archaeologist, is really exciting.
This is such an epic landscape created by ancient volcanic activity, but we know that there's human activity here too. And then it's quite astounding that nobody has investigated that up until this point. This is like an archaeological jewel sitting right in Edinburgh. And for the first time, archaeologists are getting a chance to investigate it. You've got to come down here and have a look at this. That is absolutely gorgeous.
It is, well spotted.
We dig for the gods that leave no bones for ships.
What a year of archaeological adventure it's been. From the Stone Age to the Romans to the Middle Ages and beyond. Oh, I've just crashed the submersible. We've crisscrossed our islands and journeyed through time. There's an archaeological dig, and it's in here. And wherever we went, new stories were waiting. It's weird. What is it? It's tantalising and frustrating at the same time. What's in there? This is still the Tudor building here, is it? Kind of.
To be honest, I'm still quite puzzled by it.
I might have to grab a mattock and get involved.
That'd be good.
It could be a burial. Bits of bodies placed in there, decapitated. And then you start wondering why, don't you? Of course, I absolutely don't believe in such superstitions, but somehow this has got to mean something. Oh my God, I cannot believe that you just had no idea that this was here. I'm already wondering what archaeological discoveries are lying in wait for us next year.
Points to the eye.